So as I was saying before, we're going to be using our half scale skirt pattern as the basis to decide how long the godet is going to be. So if you had your full scale pattern, you'd want to decide, firstly, as part of your design of your skirt, how deep the godet would be. So I'm just going to mark on my pattern where I would like the godet to start. So I'm going to say, in fact, I'm just going to put the two pattern pieces seam to seam on top of each other, and then I'm just going to mark with my tracing wheel where I'm going to start my godet. So I want it about 1/3 of the way up. So I've just marked that there. So that's now on both sides. And I'm just going to mark it with pencil also. Okay, and then I'm going to measure, obviously, whatever seam allowance you have on the bottom. I've just put 1 centimetre on this test pattern, but whatever hem length it is, so if it's 4 centimetres, that needs to be included in the godet as well. So I'm measuring the full length from the bottom of the skirt to my mark. So let's say that's 16 centimetres. It's measuring 8 on here, but this is a half scale, so I've times it by 2, so 16 is going to be the length of my godet. So that, now I know that. Now to draft the pattern, I'm going to start off, obviously use pattern paper where you've got it. I'm going to start off with a straight line. I'm then going to draw a perpendicular line, so across my straight line at the bottom. And you're also going to have to decide, so I'm going to use pen because that's not coming up very clearly. You're also going to have to decide how wide you want your godet. So this is also a style thing. Godet is adding fullness to the bottom of the skirt. So you may just want a little bit, maybe you want a big one, but that's up to you. That's part of your fashion design. I'm going to say I want my godet overall to be 14 centimetres. So I'm dividing that either side of the line. So I'm going to mark 7 centimetres here, and I'm going to mark 7 centimetres here. So I know that where I want to insert my godet, so the bottom line of the stitching was going to be 16 centimetres up from the hem. So I now have to find out, so these sides are going to be our stitched panels. So that's where the godet is going to be sewn into the skirt. So these sides also have to measure 16 centimetres. So what I can do is from the outer point of my godet, which I've marked, I can just take my grading square or my pattern master, and until 16 centimetres intersects my straight line in the middle, I just keep moving. So there I've got my 0 on the outer edge of my godet, and then I've got 16 on the centre line. And I'm just going to mark that. There we go. And then the same on the other side, so it's going to be 16 on both sides. There we go. And then this is going to be the point where we tack, and that is where the point of the godet is going to meet the side panels of the skirt. So we also have to add seam allowance. Now it's going to be the same seam allowance that you have for the seams of the panels of the skirt, which is 1 centimetre. So I'm going to put my grading square on here and just add 1 centimetre seam allowance until it intersects up at the top there. So you see. And again on the other side. So now we have something that looks like this. But a godet, the whole point is that it's a part of a circle. So it's going to have a rounded bottom. So you could create your pattern piece using a compass. So you could draw an entire circle with the radius, the length of your, whatever the radius you choose for the length of your godet. Or you could just use your French curve or your flexi curve in my case. And I've decided, so my godet is just going to curve 1 centimetre from the bottom. So at the bottom of my godet, I'm just going to mark 1 centimetre. And then using my curve, I'm going to draw a curved line, which has to be at a right angle with the centre, because otherwise it's going to create a kind of B shape, but we want a smooth D shape. So in the middle here, that is a right angle. So from this point, I'm just going to draw a curved line, and I'm only going to do this to one side because we want it to be equal on both sides, and we're going to use this line to create the curve on the other side using our grading square. So I've done 1/2 now. So now I'm going to fold this down the middle. And using my tracing wheel, I'm going to just mark along the curve so that it's transferring the information to the other side. And there I have the curve reflected on the other side. So now I know I've got my godet piece, which is going to fit. So this side is 16 centimetres, and then we've got our seam allowance, and the only marking we're going to use on our pattern piece, so when we put this into the calico, is we're going to do a tailor's tack on this point, because this is the point that intersects both sides of the skirt panels. So I'm going to cut my piece out. In fact, you could just cut your pattern piece out straight from here. And that's also going to make sure that it's the same curve on both sides. Okay. So I've got my pattern piece. Now I'm going to cut it out in cloth. So this centre line also acts as your grain line. Obviously, as it starts curving here, that's going to start being on the bias. So that's where your fabric will start to fold in a really nice way once it's inserted, especially if it's something like silk, you know, something really beautifully drapey. So this is going to be my grain line. So I'm actually going to use pencil for this because it's going to bleed through. And you can mark your seam allowances onto the pattern piece if you wish, but we know that it's 1 centimetre. And whenever you come to a point when you're marking out a pattern piece on fabric, always overlap the points so that they cross, so that you know exactly where that ends. Okay. So for accuracy, I'm just going to use my straight edge to join up the bottom and the top. All right, and then I'm going to cut my pattern piece. And remember, we have to mark our sewing point on the fabric as well. So I'm just going to place it on my fabric again. And I'm just going to make a little hole. So you could use your awl, but I'm just going to use my quick unpick to create a little hole. And then you could just use your thread straight away if you weren't able to mark the fabric, but in this case, obviously I don't mind marking my calico. So I've made a little dot, and then using your needle and thread, you're going to put a little tack around. So you're just sewing in a little square around the mark as close as possible. And then you can let the threads stay long so that they are very obvious when you're sewing, so you know when to stop. Okay, so I'm just going to snip them. So I've got a little square of threads. Okay. So where did I? Ah, yes. So now, obviously, when you've got your real full-size skirt panels, they're going to be much larger than this, but as we're just doing a sample, we will keep them small to save the fabric. So as we knew from marking on the half-scale pattern, our godet is going in. Oh yeah, there's the markings. It's going in 16 centimetres up from the bottom. So we're going to mark that on our pattern pieces here as well. So this one's going on top of this one. So measure up 16 centimetres from the bottom. And then I'm just going to sew from the top of the fabric to this point, to this 16 centimetre point, with a centimetre seam allowance as the pattern dictates. Obviously, if you were doing the full-size skirt, you'd probably be travelling a much further distance. Okay. But it's important that you don't go any further than your mark. And then obviously back stitch to secure it. Okay, I'm using black thread to make it more obvious. So now I've stitched to this 16 centimetre mark, so this distance is 16 centimetres. Now I'm just going to press this open. So I've pressed open my seam just at the top there. So next we're going to be inserting the godet into this gap. So we just start off on one side, and this is going to the hem, and then this stitch point that we've made with our tailor's tack will intersect the place that we've stopped sewing exactly. And we're not going to be sewing any further than this point. So I'm just going to pin this in. And then all the way down. Just going to secure with a few pins. And we only do this one side at a time. So now I've pinned the first part of my godet in, and I can see the tailor's tack here. So you want to be able to see that. That's going to be your guide. So now I'm going to start sewing. And it's your centimetre seam allowance. Obviously back stitch. And you want to really slow down when you get to the top so that you can be guiding your needle right into the point that you're sewing. Great, so it's gone right in the centre there. And I've back tacked as well. So that's one side. And then we move on to the other side. At this point we don't press the seam open, but we are going to do that, and we'll get that nice and clean by snipping into our fabric. So I'm just going to match up the other sides as well. And we want to watch not to sew this time into the other side of the godet or the other side of the skirt panel. Ooh. Come on, sewing machine. There we go. Something's not happy. Bear with me. Those away and start again. All right. Well, it's not very happy, so I'm just going to stop there. But luckily, I've got one I did earlier. So once you have sewn down both sides, so let's pretend we've just sewn this one. Then I'm going to snip into the panel sides. So it's not into the godet I'm snipping. The godet remains a triangular piece, all in one, like that. But I'm going to snip into the seam by the point that the godet has intersected our skirt. I'm going to snip on both sides, so snip here and here. And then I'm going to press those seams open. So you're going to end up with a nice, clean, open set of seams in the triangle. And on the front side, it's going to look lovely and clean. Obviously in calico, it doesn't, you know, have so much of a drape. But if you were to have that in your skirt, it would be adding fullness, and it would be a lovely, seamless way of adding fullness. All right.